Everybody, welcome back. I'm Dan. This is iAllegedly, and boy, do I have a good one for you today. I have my favorite trend economist on the planet Earth, Gerald Celente, as a guest. You guys have asked for this, and now you're going to get it. And I am absolutely thrilled, Gerald, that you're joining us. So, Gerald, thank you for being here.
No, thank you for having me. I very much appreciate it.
Okay, I want to tell a quick story, and that is, in 2007, I was driving through Tustin, California, and a local radio station brought on you as a guest, and they labeled you a trend economist. And you were talking about where things were going in the economy and how we were in such huge trouble at this time. And it was really made such an impact on me, because you were talking about how there were too many office supply stores and what a complete disaster it was, and how this is a trend that is going to absolutely explode. And I'm sitting there on Jamboree near Irvine Boulevard, and I pull over and I'm like, wait a second, he's out. Look at this. You've got, Office Depot here, Office Max over here, Staples over here. How can you support that? And then as I get out of my car and I'm looking at this, I also see that on one corner you've got Lowe's, and on the other corner you've got Home Depot. I'm like, how can you support two big, home improvement stores like that? And then the topper was the Good Guys had just gone out of business in 2006, and Best Buy had replaced them. And across the street was Circuit City, which we know went out of business in 2009. So I'm like, wow, this guy's really on top of something. But sir, everything that you predicted about the economy leading into 2008, 2009, 10, 11, 12, you were absolutely right. So I have followed you all this time. It's an absolute honor to have you on the channel.
Thank you.
And, thank you for being here.
No, my appreciation. Thank you. Go on.
No, go ahead. I also want to, before we get into it, guys, Gerald runs the Trends Journal, trendsjournal.com. They have a yearly subscription, but the best part is now they just have a monthly subscription that you guys can buy. So please take a look at the trendsjournal.com, and the link will be in the video description below as well.
Thank you. I've never worked harder in my life. The magazine we began writing it in 1991 when they called them newsletters, and it was 8 pages, and it was a quarterly.
Wow.
And then it became a monthly, and now it's a weekly, and we average about 150 pages a week. No ads.
That's amazing. But I'm also sure that you're a lot like me, where you wake up every day and there's just news every day. It's never ending.
This is what I do. I underline the salient points of the stories, and I comment on them, and they go to the writers. So the writers, what they do is they write the stories. So this is, let's see what this one is. Falling factory output offers ECB more scope to slow rate rises. So this is from the Financial Times. And
one thing that's amazing right now is that, as I was, with everything that's happening with crypto right now and with the economy, I just, I've studied the Depression quite a bit. And I really believe that we're going to repeat ourselves in this economy and having a major, major crash. And, we went through, with the innovators in our economy, with Henry Ford and with Mellon and with everybody that in the steel industry, I am just absolutely amazed that right now we have no manufacturing in this country now. It's a service economy that's built on haircuts and lattes, and you can't run a country this way. No. And with the crypto debacle that's happening right now with FTX, I mean, it's absolutely amazing that so much emphasis is being put on this, and this is just a good old-fashioned Ponzi scheme, scam, fraud that was perpetrated on people.
Well, going back, let me figure out what I was talking about, and I'm going to go back to your Ponzi scheme. Falling factory output offers ECB more scope to slow rate rises. Now, this is what we do with the Trends Journal. So this comes out on a Tuesday. The next day, they're going to, on a Wednesday, Thursday, they're going to raise rates, right? So now they say they're not going to raise them much. And then the next day, ECB hikes rates, sees significant increases ahead as it announces plans to shrink balance sheet. A total opposite one day to the other.
Absolutely.
So what we do is we write the stories of how they're being reported. Then we give our trends analysis and trend forecast. So going back, and this is very important, when we're talking about the ECB, these are people that had what? Negative interest rates since what, 2014?
Yes.
Artificially propping up the economies with negative interest rates. And then the COVID war happens. The United States goes to zero interest rates, pumps in from the government over $6 trillion. We were talking about before how you first heard about me and talking about the big chains. So now let's go back to the cheap money. Not only that the federal government dumps in over $6 trillion, the Federal Reserve bringing interest rates to zero. 2021 merger and acquisition activity at an all-time high, putting everybody else out of business. And you mentioned before, you were mentioning about how we become a quote service sector society, and what you said about serving lattes and giving haircuts is about what would happen. And again, you know, just briefly, I began my career at a graduate school working on political campaigns. And I became the top guy running campaigns in Westchester County, richest county in America back in the early 70s. And they sent me up to Albany. I was the assistant to the secretary of the New York State Senate. And it was the worst job I ever had. I quit after 1 year, watching grown men grovel to suck their way up to the top 8 my trip. And then I became a chief government affairs specialist for the chemical industry. I was killing environmental legislation at the height of the environmental movement in the 1970s, staying at 28 years old, staying at the Willard Hotel and putting my meetings on at the Hay Adams. I picked up Ronald Reagan 2 days before he was running for president, put on a brunch with 69 board of directors. I have a picture of me and him. And so I've been with presidents, prime ministers, and princes. I'm going back to the scam here about the Federal Reserve, what's going on, how the bigs got bigger, a little slime ball, a little jerk, a little boy of nothing, a little arrogant clown, Bill Clinton. I wrote the book Trend Tracking, Far Better Than Megatrends, Time Magazine, 1989.
Okay.
In that book, I had forecast to be a new third party. And I mentioned Ross Perot, 1989. Clinton, Perot, and Bush, 1992 campaign. By the way, John Connolly, the guy that took the bullet in the back, sitting in front of Kennedy, wanted to meet me in 92. I have a photo of me, him, and his wife in front of the book depository.
Wow.
Yes, the first time back since the assassination. And we're going back into the Anatole Hotel. He said to me, I read your book, Trend Tracking. He says, a fine piece of work. He said, but you don't have a clue what's going on. Remember, this is the Democratic governor who almost died taking a bullet in the back in Kennedy. He said, you don't have a clue what's going on, and neither do the American people, because if they did, there'd be a revolution in this country. He was also the Treasury Secretary under Richard Nixon that took us off the gold standard. That John Connolly. Going back to what you said about a service sector economy and putting this all together, that little slime ball, Bill Clinton and Al Gore, another little daddy's boy born on third base and thought he had a home run, a little arrogant nothing of a boy. We're going to get rid of them dirty manufacturing jobs. I'm going back to Ross Perot. The next, you know, him talking about what would happen with if we went into NAFTA. All the jobs were sent out there. Everything was lost. I'm in New York, upstate New York. There were manufacturing places, Gant Factory. I'm in Kingston. They used to be
all over.
All gone. All gone. Because these little low-life boys and girls get paid off. Morons and imbeciles call it campaign contributions. This little clown of a nothing boy, a little bastard who bombed the hell out of Iraq and killed over 500,000 Iraqi children under the age of 5. Bill Clinton with his sanctions, when Madeleine Albright is asked on 60 Minutes, is the price of 500,000 Iraqi children dead worth the price of the sanctions? He said, yes, it is. Yeah,
Wow.
that Bill Clinton, every time he got caught with his pants down, bombs away over Baghdad, gave us NAFTA and brought China into the World Trade Organization. You look at China's GDP before that little bastard brought them in. It's a straight line from 1970. 2001, they went in officially 2 weeks after 9/11 when nobody's watching it, and China's GDP explodes. Here's the deal. You want to get our cheap labor in China? Yeah, come on over. You got to open up a company over here. Give us all of your research. We can't make shit. Give us all of your technology, heavy industry, high tech. You give us everything. And by the way, you can only own 49% of the company. We own the rest. Okay. I'll go over there. I want the cheap labor. I want to make more money. I want to make more money. That was the beginning of the end.
Well, it's gone on for decades now.
Yep.
And it's funny. I have a nurse that my girlfriend's ill, and a nurse that was taking care of her. It was telling me how she grew up in Michigan, and how the plants, the manufacturing plants, were a sight to see. You'd see parking, that with thousands of cars out there working, and they leveled these buildings. There's no automotive industry the way that it was, 2-3 decades ago. There's no service. There's no parts industry. We have none of that here in the United States. There were people, think about this. There were people that worked at the manufacturing plants, their kids, their grandkids, everybody had those jobs, and we have none of that now. And that's, don't get it. My kids don't get it. My kids don't understand factories and manufacturers. They're in their 20s now, and they don't get that we at one point made everything and we make nothing. And if you want to have a problem, I mean, it's gonna come. And the fact that you turn on the news and the news tells us how great everything is. And on today's video that I dropped, I was talking about, Reuters had one day the economy is gaining steam, and then 10 days later they used the same photo in Reuters and said, oh, retail is off. And retail is up, retail's gaining steam, and now it's off. And you have the same exact photo. And I showed that. It's ridiculous.
Yep, that's what I was saying with this FT article. And by the way, what is retail sales? We're down 0.6%. Oh, but that doesn't count for inflation, which is what, up 7.1%. But if you go to John Williams' shadow stats, it's really up about 15%.
Here's the thing. I remember, I'm in my, mid to late 50s, and I, remember the 70s. I remember the gas shortages. I remember my father's, business, a home improvement company, trying to finance room additions. And I walked in his office, and he, remember this day, son, interest rates, the prime lending rate is 18%.
Yep.
And I remember the gas shortages of the 70s and everything that we experienced. And people write me and tell me, oh, it's not as bad as the 70s. I think this is worse.
Oh, it's way worse.
To sit there and to say that we're not in a recession is ridiculous. If anybody went to school and you had the 2 down GDP quarters, Mexico just experienced that. They had 2 down GDP quarters, and Mexico's in a recession, but we're not. They keep naming things, different names, growth recession, all these other ridiculous things that they're coming up with that mean nothing. And the fact that you're about to experience mass layoffs. When have you ever heard of retailers that could potentially file bankruptcy around the holidays? Which I don't know how JCPenney's is open. I don't know how Macy's is open. I don't know how these companies have stayed afloat during this time. But I think we're going to see massive retailers go out of business, in addition to these malls that we've seen over the course of the last couple of years. These malls have suffered tremendously. Retail's down, an absolute ton.
When you put inflation into the numbers that are down, again, if you have retail sales down 0.6% in November, and then you put inflation into it, it's down much more. So it's costing people a lot more to buy a lot less.
Yes,
And the
absolutely.
pull on the malls is something, we've been writing about for years, and it's over. It's gone. And it's going to, again, we are going to go into the worst geopolitical and socioeconomic crisis in modern history. Again, oh, but by the way, when I was talking about, I forgot that Bill Clinton, the murderer who didn't, the Yugoslav war, on and on and on. They pay that clown and his wife there, Goldman Sachs. You could hear this guy BS for nothing. They pay him $300,000 to give an hour talk. What are you kidding me?
It's ridiculous.
How
It's
about a payoff?
Who
are
it's
you
funny.
Talking to?
It's
Who
funny.
are you? What am I in the 6th grade? No, you're an average American. You gotta swallow crap. Don't forget to turn into the Cartoon News Network. Yeah.
Oh,
CNN.
I call it the Clinton News Network myself. So that's what I've always called
It's
it.
a joke. It's a joke. So going back to what's the serious thing that's going on is when all else fails, they take you to war. Which followed the Great Depression.
I was going to say I was going to say my little mantra, and that was the one thing I was going to say. And my main man, Gerald Celente, says, when they run out of ideas, they take us to war. So
that's it. World War II follows the Great Depression. The dot-com bust, the Trends Journal, we had forecast in October 1999 that the dot-com bust would happen by the second quarter of 2000. It happened in March of 2000. The economy was going down the toilet. People couldn't stand little Georgie Bush, another little moronic, arrogant little imbecile, another daddy's boy. Again, it's one big club and you ain't in it, as George Carlin said.
Yes.
The markets are going, the NASDAQ was down 66% before 9/11. But, hey, I got an idea. We'll get the people's mind off it. We're going to get that guy Osama bin Laden dead or alive.
Yeah.
88% of the people swallowed the crap. The Afghan war, longest war in American history. And let's invent something. Don't have a job? Out of work? Deep in debt? Don't worry about it. Want to buy a house? Here, sign over here. We'll call it a subprime mortgage.
See, Gerald,
they artificially propped up the markets until the panic of 08.
And but that, you seriously, you were spot on with that, with calling this, because you can't have a guy that works at McDonald's living in a $500,000 house. And these people would buy these houses and get $1 million loans and have a $1,200 payment for the first 2 years. And then when it would adjust to the real rate and then it shot up, these people had no idea. People would sign those loan documents and not look at what could happen. And here in Southern California, we experienced this, like nothing, nobody else, because things shot up. You had all this foreclosures. And again, I think we're going to see foreclosures come and go. I mean, they're going to come in a wave. I have talked to so many realtors around the country, and I went in October, I went with a realtor, Denise, in Vegas, who took me around to houses that had been on the market for almost 6 months now. And people made the mistake, Gerald, where they would go out and you got to get this house, Gerald. You and your wife got to make a move now. Okay, we'll bid $100,000 above asking. Okay, you get the house. What about the house we're living in? Don't worry, we'll sell that. And now they're stuck with 2 mortgage payments. Wow. And they cannot unload these houses. And she took us to 5 houses that day, and 3 of the 5 were second houses where they're waiting. One of them was literally on the market for 6 months. And I mean, that's the kiss of death. Nobody can afford, nobody's that rich that they can afford to make 2 mortgage payments and have a house just, collect dust. And I just think Vegas, people need to look at certain areas like Las Vegas, where it popped up so much. Phoenix, Arizona, that went up 38%. That's insane. And people were, right now paying all this money, where 2 years earlier, a house was 250 grand. Now they're paying 500 grand for it. That's the kiss of death. And she showed us other houses where people had sold the house 45 days earlier for almost 600 grand, and they couldn't get over 450,000 now. And people, we want what they got 3 houses down. Market's turned. So
I would have never thought, by the way, that would have that big housing boom would have happened. When if the COVID war, they locking down everything, people are out of work. I would have never thought it would have happened. But again,
Joe,
I never would have
crazy.
thought. Yeah. And now going back to everything that you said, it is going to be a catastrophe ahead. And
everybody's convinced that BlackRock, Blackstone, whoever is going to buy all this real estate, and they're going to buy a lot of it. But when you look at Lennar Homes is one of the largest home builders in the world. And one thing that we covered on my channel was they went a year ago from 16,000 uncompleted houses on their financial statements to 18,000 to 25,000 to 28,000. And now this last week, they announced that they want to unload 5,000 houses to investors. This is the kiss of death. I mean, these poor people that have bought these houses, and I'm really lucky because I've got a sophisticated audience. That's the majority are fairly successful, but they're sending me all this information from around the country, Ohio,
right,
all these different home builders that are offering teaser rates and $150,000 adjustments, all these crazy things that are just that's the kiss of death and the recipe for a disaster.
Nearly half of young adults in U.S. are living at home with their parents. The level of young adults living at home peaked at 49.5% around 2020, coinciding with the outbreak of the COVID-19, right, Bubba, the data, but the analyst estimates that around 48% now of young adults are living with their parents in 2022. And the reason is, when asked about the incentives to move with their parents, 51% of young adults said that it was to save money, and 39% of them said it was because they could not afford to pay rent.
Okay, now
That's
this gets
the America
better.
of today.
It is. And I'll tell you, I sat down and had a meeting with a financial advisor, an attorney that does trusts and things like that. And he told me, something I had told him was that in the beach communities here in Southern California, we are seeing more and more people that are inheriting houses, and they can't afford the taxes. They can't afford to maintain the houses. So these beach houses that have, the great grandma bought it for $30,000 and now it's worth $5.5 million. They can't afford to maintain the house, not even, pay the taxes, nothing right now. And you're seeing these houses flood the market. You're seeing Balboa Island, Laguna Beach, Newport Beach, all these areas that people, want to get to, but they could never afford. And these people are losing these houses. But this is happening throughout the country, that these houses are not being able to be maintained.
And what they're going to do is, as the economies go down, they're going to do more and more to raise taxes, to steal more of our money, because they need the dough. And when you look at what we're really writing about, it's going to be the biggest crisis is in, let me see if I have one of the articles here in the Trends Journal, is about the office building sector. The office sector is going to go down harder than anything else.
I just covered a story this morning on this. Springfield, Illinois, a developer wants to take an office building and convert it to houses. And people are like, oh, what a great idea. And well, the city council's a den of idiots, because you just can't take an office building with no exits, no ventilation, and just put a house in it. It just doesn't work that way. You can't convert it to a condo. It's going to be incredibly expensive.
All right, these are the facts that we reported. If a office building was built in the last 50 years, you can't convert them into housing. That's according to the data that's out there.
Wow. So
now this is a story from the Wall Street Journal on Wednesday. This is what I was looking for. Falling building values spur tax appeals. Sharp decline in office building values is likely to become a growing problem for the budgets of cities, schools, and other jurisdictions that depend heavily on property taxes for their owners. So what people are doing is they're They're going in and they want to get, want their taxes reduced because the value of their properties has gone down. So because the values of the property are going down, they're going to make it up on hitting we the little people, because these, so now this is the data I wanted. This is their quote. Quote, "We're definitely appealing," said Oliver Carr, chief executive of Carr Properties, who estimates office values are down 15 to 40% depending on the building.
Wow.
And we have higher interest rates, and we have less demand for space. So now these big companies that own all these big buildings, now you got your variable rate mortgages that are going up as interest rates are going up. People don't want to commute an hour and a half and back and forth from work. When they locked everybody down for months, they're saying to themselves, holy Christ, I'm going back and forth to work, getting up at 5 a.m. How the hell I don't want to do this anymore.
Right.
So now the remote work is going to be a real thing. Yeah, they may go back 2 or 3 days a week, but what's your office occupancy rate in the United States? Depending on whose numbers you look at, let's take an average of 55%. All the businesses that depended on commuters, dry cleaners, only 30% have gone out of business.
That's
one
horrible.
after another. No more happy hours anymore. Now let's go back to the building sector. It was overbuilt before this happened. So now you're going to see a crash in the office building sector that's going to make the real estate crash decline in the private sector tiny. This is
I
going
still
to be.
can't believe it hasn't happened yet. I am from a guy, I have filmed in some of the great beach communities, and I have shown you that there's just all these vacancies in places that people go to vacation and they're not spending the money. And these places are just sitting there empty, and office buildings, you know, you're 55%. I think it's generous. I mean, I really think that these
Again, I'm
buildings
just putting
are
a number out there.
Oh, no,
You know,
I hear you. I absolutely hear you.
Let's take that number. It could be a lot worse.
But who's making the mortgage payments on these?
And
Who's
that's
paying
what I'm
the
trying to
taxes?
say.
Yeah.
This thing is going to crash. Like now we're talking about higher interest rates. So let's take a globalnomic perspective. Number one, let's start with the United States. You got a $31 trillion debt. Oh, and you're raising interest rates. You got to pay more on your interest, right? Oh, and again, all of those, the Black Rocks, the Blackstones, all of the other ones, all the private equity groups, all the stuff that you bought.
Mhm.
Oh, you got to pay more money on that now, right? Right? How are you going to pay it? Now let's go and take the big picture. When interest rates were at zero and countries, all the emerging markets and other countries around the world borrowing money in dollars, now they got to pay it back as the dollar's strong and their currencies are on the toilet. They got to pay a lot more dough to pay their loan back that's based in dollars. Now, you're going to see protests and demonstrations all across the planet as people take to the streets because of lack of basic living standards, government corruption, crime, violence. You're going to see civil unrest like we've never seen before. And guess what? You think we got a bad immigration problem now or anywhere else? You haven't seen anything yet. Again, people are going to do everything they can to escape these countries and try to get to a safe haven nation. And as they keep expanding the wars, it's going to get much worse. So that's what we do in looking at the global perspective of this. And I want to mention something to you. It has nothing to do with economics or anything else, but this is what I just came up with, and this is what I'm going to be working on. And besides, of course, the Occupy Peace movement, that's one of my priorities. I want your opinion and your feedback and everyone listening on this. The only way I see this ending, oh, and by the way, I used to also teach, I designed America's first course in American politics and campaign technology, how to run political campaigns. I taught it at St. John's University. I know a thing or two about this stuff, but here's my concept. Unless we get rid of the crime syndicate that people call the Republicans and the Democrats, it's only going to get worse. How could anybody with a pair of cojones bigger than a mothball look up to a little clown like Chucky Schumer, Mitch McConnell, Lindsay, did you come out of the closet yet, Graham, Nancy Pelosi, Diane Not So Feinstein? How could you look up to these arrogant pieces of low-life crap?
You know,
if we don't have a new system, we're finished. So here's my concept. Here is my president and vice president for 2024. RFK Jr. as president and Judge Andrew Napolitano as vice president.
Wow, that would be amazing. You know, one thing that we've always preached on this channel is that there is no political party. The political party is the small business person, because you get people that are right, left, you're wrong. And that's the thing, Gerald. You know, when I was a kid, if there was a different political opinion, oh, that's how you feel, that's interesting. But now it's you're deathly wrong. You know, it's out of control how bad this has got.
One of the covers of our Trends Journal just 3 weeks ago was Politics, the New Religion. Exactly what you said. Before, nobody cared. Yeah, I'm this, I'm that. So what? You know, it wasn't a big deal. But now, as you said, now it's an argument. And again, I'm a political atheist. I don't believe in any of the political system. It's a crime syndicate. But this is what I want your feedback on this and what everybody listening to do. So here's my thought. We have to get them on a new, they're not going to go on either of the party. There's no way they're going to let them in. And to me, it's to put them on the libertarian ticket, because that's the only one that I know of that has, it's almost impossible now to start a third party to get on ballots and then get on other ballots that exist, maybe a Green Party or something. But when you look at the latest data that came out, according to CNBC, so it's not like, you know, was it over 60% of the Republicans don't want Trump, and like 90% don't want Biden. The people are fed up with the party. So to me, the only way to change this is with a new party. And to me, it's RFK Jr. and Napolitano. Yeah, that's a bold prediction. That would be great, though. That would be fantastic, as I think they're both. I met Robert one time at an event, and just a great guy. Yeah. And I think Judge Napolitano is just no nonsense. And I think it would be great. We need a different direction right now. This is just. And they're different. And that's the other thing. They're different. They're not the same. You know, with these clowns, I'm just like the president. I'm the vice president. I'm a good, you know, cut their crap out. And again, you know, we need real people in there. By the way, I was a keynote speaker at Ron Paul's event in 2021. And it was Massey, was it Thomas Massey from Kentucky? He's a great guy. The congressman, Napolitano, RFK Jr., myself, we were the speakers. Oh, that's awesome. And that's an RFK went on after me, and as he's coming off the stage, he said, "I will fight to my death for freedom." This is a guy whose father was assassinated. And his uncle, JFK, the president of the United States, assassinated. Could you imagine what's in this guy's heart and mind? It's unimaginable. And we need people like this. Exactly. And you know what the problem is right now is that these politicians go in there and get a job that pays about $200 grand a year. And then 4 and 8 years later, they're worth $18 million. And it's like all this money that's coming in. And it's just, people. They're little low lives. These are the people you hated in high school and college that wanted to be class president. I'm telling you, when I'm up in the Senate, right? And my buddy, Brian Donahue, his wife became a lieutenant governor on the Pataki. I was right at the top. And anyway, we're young guys. I'm 26 years old. We're standing in the back of the chamber. They're ready to go on. We got a clown that we hire, a sergeant at arms, some sloppy looking jerk. Senator Tom Jones, opening the door from Senator Frank Smith. And my buddies and I were talking. All of a sudden, my friends would leave, follow the senator to his seat. You could blow on these seats, and they'd move these beautiful leather thing. They pull out the chair and help him sit down. You come back, I say to guys, hey, man, what's the matter? Cat can't sit down by himself. He needs some help. They say, Gerald, you have that kind of an attitude. You're not going to make it here. I said, listen, this isn't my trip.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. When I was a little kid, I didn't know what was going on. My mother, may she rest in peace, would say to me, if something happened, she'd say, and I didn't know what was going on with people arguing. She said, I hate cowards. I hate cowards. So I would never become a coward. I wouldn't disrespect my mother. Although I've done a lot of other things she wouldn't have been happy about. But anyway, I'm a man. I'm a fighter. And not just in my mouth. I taught close combat, had my own school for many years. I'm a freedom-loving peace man. If you try to attack me, I'll kill you. I'm serious. We attack
I believe
the attacker. It's not bullshit. And again, I'm a Napolitan. I just turned 76 in November 29th. I'm a Napolitano, born in the Bronx, born to be free. And Neapolitans are different than the rest of the Italians. We cry our eyes out when our heart breaks, and we'll slit your throat if you try to screw with us. And the reason the Neapolitans are different is because Naples was the richest seaport in the world for centuries. Mm-hmm. From the Arabs to the English, to the Germans, to the French, one after another, they tried to come in and conquer it. So we learned how to fight.
Kids don't learn that today.
And that's what we got. We're in the fight for and that's, by the way, that's why we could win. Because when you call out, if little Chucky Schumer came over here and he's after I'll tell you what happened. This guy was running for governor in New York. I forgot his name. And I'm in my office, and I have a big office on the main street over here. It's an old supermarket. He opens the door. He said, "Hi there, I'm running for governor." I said, "Who are you to walk in here like this?" I said, "Get the hell out of here." If Chucky Schumer came in here and said, "Celente, come over here." I said, "Who are you talking to? Come over here. Who the hell are you to tell me anything? Get this in your head. You're a public servant." They
don't think that way anymore. That's
I know. And if the people call these people out man to man, as we'd say in the Bronx, they wouldn't know what a piece of shit. They'd fold like that. They'd fold like that. They're little cowards of nothing. And these little cowards have robbed us of our life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I got to tell you, you got that little arrogant boy over there, Gavin Newsom. Could you get more arrogant than that little boy?
Our state is a mess. Homelessness.
Eating $400 a plate dinner as I tell you to stay at home because I'm better than you. What an arrogant little clown. How could people take this crap and let them run your life and ruin it?
It's happening. And, happening. Think about this. Gas here in California hit almost $7 a gallon. And now it drops down to $4, and everybody goes, "Isn't that great?" No, it was $3 before all this started, and now it's this high. It's too much. It's interest rates shooting up. Everything's happening. We cannot afford anything in the state. No, you're having such a problem with crime, retail crime. You're having a problem with homelessness. Oh my God, it's a disaster. You're seeing.
By the way, I came up with a homeless solution. And they refused to report it. And by the way, we reported all of this. We said all this was going to happen in the Trends Journal when they started the COVID war. You talked about crime. When people lose everything and have nothing left to lose, they lose it. We said this was going to happen.
Absolutely.
Now, here's the homeless solution. Once upon a time, there was a movie called Boys Town.
Okay.
They took all these kids that didn't have lives, screwed up things. They put them in the country and gave them crafts, learned how to do things, taught them, and they grew up and they put homeless people, quote, in shelters. The shelters are these ugly joints that are owned by people that pay off the politicians that spend billions of our dollars to put them in
Absolutely.
there. And now they're walking out on the street or living in the street. I don't want somebody camping in front of my place. All right? I pay a lot of taxes. So here's what I want to do. I'm up in Kingston, New York, first capital of New York State. And by the way, I own 3 of the most historic buildings in America. The only corners where they're pre-Revolutionary War stone buildings. I own the 1750 Franz Rogan House, the 1763 Dr. Jensen House, and the 1774 Academy, one of the first public schools. I bought these because the seeds of democracy were sown here. As the first capital of New York State, before the British burnt it down, over 70% of America's Constitution comes from here. And John Jay, the Supreme Court he was a judge here. Anyway, I don't want people. I'm not a rich guy. I work for a living. My daddy didn't leave me money. You know, you got your own problems. I got mine. Get the hell out of here. I'm in the Catskills over here, the foothills of the Catskills. Once upon a time, they called it the Borscht Belt. Is where all the great entertainers, the Jerry Lewises, all of them, they used to go to the hotels, Grossingers on. They're all dead now. Let's take the homeless and build beautiful homeless towns in the country. Beautiful, beautiful, because the billions of dollars that they're wasting of our dough to give to their buddies ain't working. Get them out of the cities, off the streets, and into the country. Now, here, you got to do this. You have to do that. Learn how to do this, do that. Oh, it's summer, springtime. Let's plant. Let's get ready for planting. Let's do this. Give them homeless towns, the new boys' towns. No, we won't do that. And not one of, we've gone to every mayor of every major town. We've gone to the major press. Not one of them will we put our homeless solution down. They won't even talk about it.
It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. You know, here in LA, they built these small houses.
I know.
And that are like sheds. And they were almost 70 grand a piece. And I'm telling you, it was a tough shed that somebody bought for $1,200 and stuck an air conditioning unit and put a power cord in there, and they got $60,000, $75,000.
I know.
Nuts. It's insane. And
it's a crime syndicate.
It is. There's been
It's not a political system. It's a crime syndicate. They're murderers and thieves.
Here's one for you. New law that goes into effect January 1st here in Southern California. You cannot get cited for jaywalking. And you can sit there and say, well, what's that have to do with it? Now, imagine driving down the street, you get stuck in traffic. People can now walk up to your car. People can do this. The crime is going to escalate as a result of this ridiculous law. And people don't get it. You're going to, you know, hey, get out of the street, you know, and a cop's giving somebody a ticket. None of that anymore. And it's just going to get worse.
You got clowns running the show. Again, these are the jerks you hated in high school and college that want to be class president and head of the student council. They never work a day in their lives. All they do is suck off the public tit. You know, and everybody's, you know, talking about, you know, all these relocations. You know, we lost population here in California. Oh, I know. Year. I mean, it's insane. And one thing I want to go through is you know, we talked about the cryptocurrency debacle with FTX. One thing that I get a kick out of is Kevin O'Leary's an imbecile. Kevin O'Leary went out and signed a $15 million deal with, you know, Sam Bankman. You know, it was just a mistake, fraud, whatever you want to call that kid. But this thing was not a business. This thing was an absolute scam from the word go. Kevin signs a $15 million deal and decides to put his own money into it and more money into that place and lost it all, which is kind of funny now because he should have taken the money out and it would have become, you know, dollars. It would have been something. But now two things he did. First thing he did was he said, hey, I tried to raise $8 billion to save this place. There was nothing to save though, Gerald. That place was a scam from the word go. And the other thing is now that this is falling apart, you see all the political donations that this kid made to everybody. It's ridiculous because there's no legitimacy to this. And this hearing, you know, the kid gets arrested, you know, a day before he's supposed to testify, which I couldn't imagine an attorney. You know, my girlfriend's a lawyer. She says, that guy's never going to testify. He's never going to test. They're never going to allow that. And he's been doing this you know, victory tour, talking to everybody that would listen to him. And he's an imbecile. But the problem with the cryptos is that it does need some type of regulation.
I think, and I just think when you look at stories about the stock exchange, the New York Stock Exchange was an unregulated business at one point. You buy and sell securities, and then they regulated it. The cryptos have got to be regulated in some sort, some way. But the people that want to do it, the Elizabeth Warren and John Marshall, whoever it is that came up with this plan, I think this is they've got to do something, but these are not the people to do it. So do you have an opinion about that?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm tired of them calling it a Ponzi scheme. I find that anti-Italian. Call it what Ponzi ripped off the people for 20 million bucks.
Oh, yeah.
What was this, a $32 billion scam?
Absolutely. Yes.
Stop calling it a Ponzi scheme. And how about that Madoff? He made off at what, $69 billion?
Yeah. Unbelievable.
According to CNBC. How about calling it a Madoff? Anyway, really, as an Italian American, I'm tired of this crap. The surprise. Hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you. Huh? Oh, yeah. You show me the one about the drunken Irishman. All right, take it easy with this stuff. Anyway, so I'm tired of this Ponzi crap. The other thing here's, you go back to our Trends Journal over 2.5 years ago. Here's the cover. From dirty cash to digital trash. They're going to use this to go digital. They are going to do away with real currency. They're going to use part of this Ponzi scheme as their excuse to go with digital currency. And here's the things that's going to make it happen. The war with Ukraine. America is at war with Ukraine. Get this in your head, everybody. We just heard our Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin. Oh, Lloyd Austin? You mean the Lloyd Austin that sat on the board of directors of Raytheon,
the
second largest defense contractor? That's our secretary. Yeah, that Lloyd Austin, saying that they're bringing American troops into Ukraine to make sure that the military equipment that we've sent them is properly used.
The only way you can use a Patriot missile is with somebody who's, you and I just can't sit there and press those buttons and do this. You have to have somebody that's trained to use those things.
And they're saying, so what this is the creep, mission creep. So what now we're talking, all of a sudden, Gerald, I got to cut. What happened? Oh, the Russians hacked our banking system. Sorry, folks, you can't get your money out, but don't worry about it. We have digital currency for you. It's going to be something like that happens.
Gerald, think about this. We cover a lot with banking. They've practiced cyber attacks with 10 different countries. Why would you do that? Why would 10 countries practice something? We believe it's going to happen. They practice blackouts in the UK in banking and having grids shut down because of the energy problems, and it's going to affect all the banking, which again doesn't make any sense. If you've got money on a digital ledger and you could get to power, the money should still be there. But hey, we're going to have civil unrest. Same thing in Germany.
I'm telling you,
now the terms and conditions, Gerald, think about this. You and I would be doomed. We'd never be able to have a bank account because somebody just sent me Truist Bank here in the States that you can't buy gambling, anything to do with gambling, anything to do with prescription medication. And, I'm on prescription medication for, stuff I've got going, and you can't buy that with your bank account now. And the one thing is, if you cannot do anything that's discourteous, or we can close your account. Yeah. What the hell does that mean? So
that's
if you're
trying to tell you, they're going to make up anything they want. When 9/11 happened, and they're saying the planes are going down the Hudson River. And I know this area inside out. 35 miles north of New York City is Indian Point nuclear power plant. I watched it being built as a kid. And I said to myself, if these planes hit that nuclear power plant, there's going to be chaos like you can't believe. If this story, what they're saying, right? I had certificates of deposit back then. I called up a bank. I was living in Rhinebeck, New York at the time. I said, listen, I want them. The bank was up in Massachusetts. I said, I want my CDs cashed out and sent to the Rhinebeck Bank, because I'm saying to myself, if they hit this thing, I'm going to get the hell out of here. I had my guns gold in a getaway plan. And my getaway plan, I'm 4 hours away from Canada. I had maps out to take the back roads because I know they closed down the major roads.
Mhm.
I was going to get the hell out of here. If you're from Canada, I could go anywhere. I'm sorry, Mr. Celente, we can't send your CDs. They're traded on Wall Street, and Wall Street is closed. All right? And I'm saying the same thing. Why would you keep your money in a bank when they're not paying you any real interest and they're making money on your money? And now we're going into a financial crisis and a geopolitical crisis where anything goes. So to me, I'm still stuck with guns, gold, and a getaway plan. To me, gold, and again, we have no advertisers in the Trends Journal, so I'm not advertising anything. To me, gold is still the #1 safe haven asset.
Absolutely. And so let's
And silver #2.
One thing I do want to cover is that I've learned more from losing in my life and having difficult times be thrust upon me and having to get out of that. And these kids today don't get it. They get participation trophies. They live with their parents. They don't learn from their experiences. My friends, we would go out, we'd live at other people's houses. I know successful guys that are multimillionaires that lived in their car at one point. And kids don't do that today. It's too difficult. But before you leave, Gerald, one thing I really want to cover with you is just let's go through some quick trends for 2023. Do you think metals are going to take off like other people are talking?
Yeah, I'm very bullish on gold. As I said, that's my #1, and silver #2.
Robert Kiyosaki has been big on there could be a possibly $3,000 an ounce gold. Do you feel that we could see something like
absolutely?
that?
Gold should be way higher than it is, and so to me, gold and the movements you're going to see anti-tax movements, anti-immigration movements. Again, an office building bust is going to be a big one. And, you're talking about being a kid, and I'll never forget, I was a young guy, I was about 17, 18 years old. I'm having dinner with my father, may he rest in peace. And he's sitting at the table. I'm over here. And he said to me, son, they say that youth is wasted on the young. And he'd take a couple more bites and he'd say, they were talking about you. You don't know anything when you're a young guy. I mean, so the whole process is you have to keep learning. 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 I really didn't start to get to where I'm really getting to where I am. And again, I've got my ups and downs too. This building that I'm at over here, I was one day away from losing it in 2007. And the reason being, I used to be on Oprah, the Today Show, Good Morning America. I was on everybody all the time. I got blacklisted because I said the United States would lose the Afghan war and the Iraq war, and that we had no business being there. And that was it. But so anyway, you come about in a different way and make different things happen. And that's the most important thing now. And so for everybody listening, this is what I suggest. As a guy, as I said, at 76, I'm fighting now for the spirit of 1776. We're going to go through the most difficult times in human history. And if we don't unite for peace, it's finished. So do what you can to get in the best shape you can, physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, every way you can, get in the best shape, become the best you can be, and do something positive every day to help reverse these negative trends. When people say, people don't care, I don't give a damn what people. I'm only interested in what Samuel Adams said. It does not take a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority, keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men. And that's where we're at, that we are that irate, tireless minority, and we must unite to stop this evil that's destroying us. Think about it. It's Christmas time. I don't care whether you believe in Christ or whatever, but what's that about? Oh, you mean the birth of Jesus Christ, the Prince of Peace, and not one word spoken about peace. Not from the Pope, not from the president, not from any religion that I know talking about peace.
Everything, Gerald, is look over here.
More war. Oh, war's great, man. Oh, Your God that you believe in loves war.
It's
This
insane.
is satanic and demonic. So I'm telling everybody we are at a critical stage and we must unite for peace and do everything you can to be in the best shape you can. Because when you get in that best shape, it's a different trip.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to remind everybody before I end it with Gerald here to look at trendsjournal.com, sign up for the Trends Journal, guys. And again, they've got a yearly subscription you can get and a monthly subscription now. It's absolutely amazing. The content is unbelievable. And, you know, don't forget to like the channel, subscribe to Gerald's channel too. And onward and upward, guys. I will see you guys very soon. And Gerald, thank you so much for doing this, sir. I really appreciate this. I could have done this for 3 hours with you today. And again, thank you, sir. Happy New Year to you. Merry Christmas. And thank you for everything, sir.
And thank you. And Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everyone. And I really appreciate being on. And I appreciate that all you're doing.
Thank you.